me now, Victor Davis Hanson, Senior Fellow at Hoover, and Dinesh D'Souza, a conservative author, filmmaker, and host of the Dinesh D'Souza podcast. Dinesh, now the following is a real line in the sand moment that we discussed in following this issue tonight. You're either in or out. You're either an anti-racist with an agenda to work with BLM, or you're basically a racist whether you admit it or not. That's how serious this is.
Yes, absolutely. This is actually a way to bring Marxism to America by taking the old category of class and substituting race. Race works better for these people than class because there is, in fact, a deep racial history in America. But of course, America is a different society now than it was, let's say, in 1950, let alone in 1850. In fact, if you made a kind of hierarchy today of the groups that are doing best in academic performance and economic success, they would be Asian Indians, then you'd have the Japanese, then you'd have the Chinese. Essentially, the Asian Americans dominate the ethnic groups at the top. So where's this white privilege? Whites are actually not at the top of the totem pole of American society anymore. The only category in which whites are on top is accumulated wealth, which of course reflects the legacy of the past. But it's very difficult for these critical race theory people to explain why Orientals and Asian Americans are doing the best, because obviously they're not discriminating against anybody. They are outperforming everybody. And so merit here is what's responsible for these differences in performance. But that has to be concealed. It has to be hidden. It has to be denied. So critical race theory is a massive pretense to get away from the idea of merit and substitute the bogus category of contemporary racial oppression.
And Victor, this is why part of the process for them in the BLM critical race theory sector is to get rid of the SATs, get rid of the ACT standardized tests, get rid of advanced mathematics and science for kids in high school. Have to get rid of that. That's part of what's going on here.
It is, and when you say they, what's strange about this, Laura, I think historians are going to look back and say, this wasn't peasants and pitchforks, grassroots. These were the most powerful, pampered, rich, affluent people in the history of civilization. This is LeBron yelling at us from his $45 million estate, from Oprah from her 90. This is the CEOs of Delta, Coke, $16, $17 million a year. Mark Zuckerberg pouring $500 million into the last election to warp a precinct or two. So, and it's not a political revolution, as you point out. I love the word marinate. This is 360 degrees. This is Maoist. This is changing the founding date. This is changing commercials. This is getting rid of the national anthem. This is redefining the number of genders. It's total. It's 24/7. And finally, you're right to really focus on education. You know, I spent my whole life, I'm dedicated to the Enlightenment, but we've lost the university. What's keeping America sane are the 65%, let's face it, that don't have a BA, that were out in the practical world and they were not in that insane asylum the last 20 years. They have their finger in the dike, and now the left says, well, there's one last challenge. We won all these institutions, but we haven't won K through 12. So I think that's really correct of you to point out they want to go after charter schools, homeschooling, parochial schools, and they want to turn it over to the teaching union, because in one generation, from 7 to 17, if they take over K through 12, it won't be they want to change America the next generation. They won't even know what America is or was.
Dinesh, part of this, as Victor says, starts very young. There's this website and a lot of cute little cartoon videos. It seems kind of inconsequential when you first look at it, but we want people to focus on this because this is very insidious. It's this thing called brain pop, okay? And it's about children's grammar and the need to use certain personal pronouns. Watch.
They can be used as a singular pronoun too. Like if you said, I'm going to see my friend, I could ask, where do they live? Since I don't know your friend's gender identity. And some individuals prefer they as a pronoun.
Dinesh, first of all, it's poorly produced, but you get the point, right? It kind of takes the kids away from their family setting or maybe their religious values, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Jewish, what have you, and breaks that bond. The goal is to break the bond with the nuclear family.
Absolutely. At some level, you're tempted to take this as comedic, as ridiculous. Of course, it's a material for satire. But these people are deadly serious. They're actually not kidding. They are trying to redefine basic categories. In fact, categories supplied by nature itself. I think the real pathology here is that white America, and you see this throughout the society, is immobilized by the accusation of racism. People who don't have a racist bone in their body don't know what to say. And this is why parents buckle. This is why school boards give in. This is why woke corporations give in. They give in because the charge of racism moves them into a theatrical mode in which they have to sort of dissociate themselves from America's past. They're petrified.
They're
and until
petrified.
they lose that fear, they have to lose that fear and really not even feel the need to respond.
All right, we gotta go.
The answer should be black is boring, white is boring, race is boring.
Yeah, move on to just who the person is on the inside. That's what's supposed to matter. Victor,